In a previous process insight, I described two virtuous circles that provide a meta model for process-based management. They show how we first choose the right process to improve, then we improve it, and then we prove that we've improved it. And repeat. We choose, we improve, we prove. We spoke about getting the circles to turn. But nobody wants to invest in a costly, labour-intensive management effort, a new and parallel management structure. Can we keep it real and practical? Can we control costs and risks? Could we make it self-funding? Yes, yes, and yes. We can do all of that and more. The 7 Enablers of BPM are 7 elements that I know that we must develop more or less in sync to ensure that we can deliver and sustain effective process-based management. They're the secret sauce of enhanced organisational performance. They get the circles turning. We discussed the circles in a different video. Quick recap here, just so we have the context. So these are the circles, the PO and the PI circle, the two virtuous circles, sometimes called the Tregear circle. In the PO circle here, we start with setting targets and KPIs for the process, and then we'll assess both the performance and any other ideas for change. And from that assessment, we'll make a response, which might include to trigger the PI circle, the process improvement circle. And the process improvement circle is any process improvement methodology that you're using. Sprint PIP, BPTrends, Lean Six Sigma, whatever it is, current state, future state, and to do are all the things the changes we've got to make to create the new current state, the new as is, which of course is the purpose of process improvement. So we make those changes, and the PO, the process ownership circle, is still turning, so we'll know what impact they had, because we'll be able to assess that performance. So in the PO circle, we decide which processes we should improve, and that's a fundamental and first decision, isn't it? If we're working on the wrong process, we can't get the best outcome. So which process should we work on and why? And then the PI circle takes the detail of the analysis, makes the recommendations, makes the changes, and then our PO circle is still there, keeping an eye on performance and letting us know what happened. So that's the PO and PI circle, the two virtuous circles. So we talk about getting the circles turning, but how do we do that? Well, the 7 Enablers of BPM help us to get the circles turning. Now, we won't have time to go through all the details of all of this in this video, but there's lots of material available on my website. I've written many columns about these elements in both the BPTrends site and the Business Rules Journal, and indeed my book, Reimagining Management, has a whole chapter on each of these enablers. But let's just look at each of them in turn. Now, important to make the point that they're all equally important. If any of them are missing, then you'll have a problem. The good news is that they're not independent variables. They're very much interconnected. So if you make a change on one, you're going to be changing one or two others as well. And if you're working on two or three of them, then you're likely to be having an impact on all of them. So that's a good thing. It lets us develop them in sync as we need to. So we don't do it one at a time. We need to be working on them all more or less at the same time. So let's have a look at each of them in turn. Equally important, but we'll start with process architecture, because if we can't visualize our processes, then there's not much else we can do. So we start with strategy. We say, what are the promises made? What are the highest level cross-functional processes that deliver on those promises to our customers and other stakeholders? And then we can work our way down, decomposing those processes as many levels as seems appropriate for our needs at the time. Okay, so now we've named our processes. Now that begs the question, how are they performing? Couple of questions, really. How are they performing? How should they perform? How could they perform? How will they perform? So we want to know as much as we can about the performance of the processes that we want to put under active management. And once we start knowing that, then that'll give us a performance gap. Now, maybe that's driven by a performance anomaly, a problem, or maybe it's driven by an opportunity, but there is a gap that we might choose to close. And that's more or less what we're going to do here at Process Governance. So process governance is about minding the gap. What is the gap? What's the impact of closing it, not closing it? Should we do it? How do we do it? When do we do it? all of those kinds of questions. Process governance is the operational piece of the horizontal or process organization management that we are adding in process-based management. Change is in the middle of my list as I go through it here, but of course it's fundamental to everything we do. This is the bit where we improve the performance of the organization. And if we're not doing that, then what's the point of any of this? And if we're not delivering proven, valued business benefits, then by our own process definitions, we are waste to be eliminated, and that would be embarrassing to say the least. So next on around as we go around the diagram is process mindset, or if you like, a process-aware culture. If we're going to collaborate across the organisation to execute our processes, then we better have a shared understanding of what that means. We're just saying we want to understand what we mean by process and process-based management and the methodology and the approach. All of these things we need to have a shared understanding about, because if we don't think process, we're not going to be able to do process. Process capability is the next enabler here, and by capability in this context, I mean just the normal English meaning of the word. We need to make sure that people have the experience and the expertise to do the kind of process work that we want them to do. Because we're not saying process-based management is work that's done by some small central support group. We will have such a group for sure, but we want everyone in the organisation to make a contribution to the development of process-based management and to the improvement of processes. The subject matter experts in our processes are out there executing them all day, so we need everyone to be involved. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone goes off and does many weeks of training. Some people will do some training, of course. Some people need to be able to create process models, for example. But other people just need to be able to read them. Some people need to be able to facilitate a process improvement project, but others just need to be able to participate. So there's a whole range of different things that we need, different levels of experience and expertise we need to give to different cohorts in our organisation. So that's what capability is all about. If we say we want people to participate, then we want to make sure that we give them every chance to do that. Process support is that central group, and that's important, but I think it's a big mistake to think they're going to do all of the work, because if we do, then they become the bottleneck. They become the Office for the Prevention of Process Improvement. That's not what we started out to do. I think that central group, the BPM, Centre of Excellence, Centre of Expertise, whatever it's called, the Operational Excellence Group, whatever you might want to call that group, I think their main role is to raise the capability of the rest of the organisation. Sure, they'll always have some residual central role. They are the people who do quality oversight. They maintain the methodology. At the end of the day, they're the people who ensure that it's all still working as it should, but they can't do everything. And we don't want them to do everything. We want everybody involved. So their job is to raise capability for the rest of the organisation. So they're the 7 enablers, all equally important. And if I ever come into an organisation, I'm asked to have a look, we're trying to do process management, but it's not quite working, I will find one or more of these missing. So we need them all, and we need to be actively developing each of them. So these are the 7 enablers of BPM. This is how we get the circles turning. Let's summarise some of this then. So this is how we enable the circles to turn. And it's important that we get those circles turning, isn't it? Because that's the basis of our active process management. We can develop them simultaneously. We need to. It's unavoidable in a way because they're not independent. We don't do them in a serial fashion. As soon as you start working on architecture, you're building capability, you're raising questions about performance, you're providing support. As soon as you get to measurement and then you start doing change, then everything's in play, isn't it? We're building mindset, we're building capability, we start to deliver change. So all of these things will happen together, and that's a good thing. But we do need a plan for each enabler. There's nothing magic. It's not going to happen. If we say we want to build capability across the organisation, then we need a capability development plan. And that doesn't need to be horrendously complicated. It just needs to say, for these different cohorts in the organisation, this is what the learning objectives, this is where they are, this is where we need them to be, this is the sort of training or experiences we're going to give them so that they can develop. So we need a plan for each of the enablers. It won't just happen magically. And of course, keep in mind as well that we're not trying to do this for hundreds of processes all at the same time. We're always doing this incremental rollout. So we're getting the circles turning for 1 or 2 or 3 processes to start with. And once it's all starting to work nicely for those, say, 3 processes, then we can add another 3, and then we can add some more as we go, building up to whatever we think is the full set of the high-impact processes that we want to have under active management. So they're the 7 enablers of BPM. This is the way we get the circles turning.